You are tuned into Kids.
In the pit.
My life, my truth, fuck yeah!
Hey guys, it's Gabe from the Kids in the Pit podcast. Today I'm being joined by Rick Brayall from 100 Demons. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun to talk shop.
Yeah. So, what do you do in 100 Demons?
Uh, I'm one of the primary writers for 100,000 years, it seems like, and I play lead guitar. Um, we we've had some members change over the years. The original
Always
band
happens.
had started with Sean Martin on guitar and Jeremy Braddock, Bubba, we call him. And when Sean left to go to Hatebreed, he recommended that I come back into the fold, and it was kind of there pretty much ever since through all the records and other than the first demo. So
Cool. Um, what year did 100 Demons start, and were you always in the band?
other than that first little piece, I've always been in the band. There was a part where I stepped away, and they had a touring guitar player for a little bit, but
Yeah.
that was about the band started officially probably 1999. And like I said, I've been there through most of it. And then as my life kind of shifted a little bit with family and stuff, I had to kind of step away. But now that my kids are all older and I actually have a grandchild now, um, I'm able to um, get back out there more and do all the shows. So, I came back in and we're doing it, I guess.
Cool. You guys have a new album out, right?
Hmm.
Tell me
Yes.
about it.
So, unfortunately, it's going on almost 2 years ago. Our bass player was having some issues that we didn't understand completely, I guess, and he decided he didn't want to be here anymore, and he ended his life.
I'm
Um,
sorry about that.
I appreciate it. So, in amongst all the turmoil of something like that happening, um, we had gotten together with some friends and, all the things that kind of go along with that, the services and all that. And so Sean had reached back out and said, if you need someone to do the shows and help out, I'd like to come back into the band. And, he plays with Twitching Tongues. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
I think I've heard of.
yeah. So it's another band he plays guitar in, and so he asked, you know, uh, if you get to know Sean at some point, um, he asks with an exclamation point, not a question mark. So it's kind of like him telling us he wanted to be in the band, and we've been friends for 100 years. So, um, it was like just the right thing, kind of to bring him back into the fold, but when he came back in, the shows that we had still, we're in the middle of doing like a 20-year of the self-titled record kind of run, doing most of that material. And he had asked, he's like, just casually, he goes, why aren't we writing a new record? And that had been something that we had gone back and forth about many times over the years. I think there was a lot of times when we weren't all on the same page at the same time. I think we all wanted it, but all of our lives kind of, as far as family lives and business and all that kind of stuff, outside of music, there is, we are all normal people, so we have all those concerns just like everyone else. It just didn't really kind of ever line up. And then, with Eric passing, and Sean is a very energetic person, and he's very driven to do his own projects. Plus, he does everything. He writes beats, he plays in other bands. He's a quite a character. And I think it was just the realignment of a bunch of friends and the right time to start putting material together. And so we brought some material that we had to the table, and we started fleshing out, songs and stuff. And we went into the studio, and so basically we did a couple songs, and with Greg Thomas over at Silver Bullet Studios, and Greg he also plays guitar in End, and had been in Misery Signals at points, and
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah, I
Greg,
did.
yeah, so Greg referred us to um, Justin at Closed Casket, and to see if he had any interest in doing anything with us, and he came and he met with us, and he was very interested in the project. And so once we kind of knew what we wanted to do, because we basically went in on initially on our own dime, and we were just going to do it, and just wherever it went. We were going to put it out there and just have a good time. That's the band has always been really just a release for us. There are points when it got to be like a job kind of, but more so, I think we're all just musicians, and we like to have fun. We like to hang out with our friends, and the band allows us to do a lot of things and be in a lot of places to get back out to revisit and see people we haven't seen in a long time. And you get to meet people all over not only the United States, but technically the world, at different points. And, you make friends, and the thing about, today, and the benefit of the younger generation is stuff like this, where like you can still keep in contact with people pretty well, whether they're on the other side of the globe or not, and but to actually be able to get back to, say, Europe or here or there, and actually be able to be in the same place as that person at the same time is one of the best parts about being in the band. Yes, the time on stage is fantastic, and getting our material out there is great, but like the connection you make with people sometimes is just equally as satisfying. So
Yeah.
like I said, we started fleshing out the ideas. We kept going in, say, 4 or 5 songs at a time. We recorded much more than we needed for the record, but we decided on 12 songs for this record, and Justin went through. We secured artwork, and we put it out, and it's been received really well so far. We're actually really excited that people, because one of the big things about it is, bands go away for a long time, and usually what happens, uh, they either can't recapture the original magic that they had, or they go in a direction that they think is growth, and maybe their fans don't agree with, and so it doesn't work out all the time. So I mean, there was a consideration, that there was a real concern that, you know are we still those guys, kind of thing. Are we still going to be that band? And I think, from a lot of the reviews, and a lot of the feedback has been that, one of the things we did not do is go outside of what is considered, I guess, our framework, our box, and we put out a record that stands up to the other records, and in some cases and opinions, maybe surpasses some of the older stuff. So we're really happy that it didn't do any damage to whatever kind of legacy we had with the people that cared about our band. Very important
Mhm.
to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be sick. So, I mean, Hatebreed like changed up their style kind of. If you listen to, I would say everything past what's that album? Not Perseverance, the one right after it.
Rise of Brutality, or after that.
Like
Yep.
stuff after that got a little more metallic. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people still like it. So
Yeah, and those guys, they come from our area, and some of them dear friends. The guys are great. We've done a lot of stuff with them in past bands, and we're from the same. We've played the same shows so much as we came up, and obviously, um, they blew up. They're on the top of the heap, for a long time, um, and deservedly so. Um, but just inevitably, when you have some shift in members and stuff, in your writing processes and stuff like that, you're going to have some changes. You know, does it ruin the band? I mean, I think in some cases it might. In their case, I don't think so. I personally know their guitar players well. Wayne is a local guy who
Come
not
on, a
now
couple.
moved. Pardon?
Sorry, I had him on the podcast a couple years ago.
Yeah. I watched it. It was great. He's a close friend. He moved out to Cali, and Frank, whom I known since Ringworm and the other bands he's been in, and both great guys. I mean, everybody's great. And it's kind of like that friendly competition. People try to pit you against each other, but they don't realize in the background, like we're from the same neighborhoods in some cases. Like we've known each other for longer than probably some people have been in the scene. So
Hmm. So, do you live in the same like part of Connecticut that you grew up in?
I do. I've lived primarily in this area most of my life. Some brief stints out of it, but I've pretty much been in this area for quite a long time. Um, I'm probably within 20 minutes of everybody in the band currently.
Okay.
Um, so everybody basically primarily generated from Waterbury. I mean, I'm one town away from them, and then people have moved over the years, but we're still all really close.
Okay. How far are you from Meriden? My death metal band plays there Friday, October 9th.
Oh, you're the next town over. It's really close.
What's the venue?
Yeah,
I
share that information with me.
venue is called Grace's Place. It's a coffee shop.
Yep, I'm familiar with it. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be a cool show. Yeah, I mean it's death metal. We'll let you know.
Yeah, I see. I've watched a bunch of your stuff. One of the things that I actually just put up a post yesterday about, because there's a lot of people that reach out and ask questions about gear, and anybody who really knows me knows I'm a real degenerate guitar collector slash gearhead. Uh,
Me too.
too
But
much too much to hundreds of stuff of guitars, and it's
I don't have
kind of
quite that.
yeah, it's more than anyone needs. But I also try to involve myself in a lot. I'm in like four other types of projects, writing some songs. um I do a death metal band with my son, who was the one of the founding members of Vomit Forth, if you've heard of them.
Oh, yeah, I know them.
Yeah, so shout out to Kane and the rest of the boys. They're still out doing it, and my son had my grandson, so he kind of stepped back and took a more dad role for right now. But
Okay.
we still write a lot, and we do a project locally with some older friends of mine too. And but like I'll do studio stuff with some friends, and so the gear kind of gets into that. But getting back to the point was, when people reach out, like I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh well, like I have the secret, like, and I'm gonna keep it all for myself, like, because there's no growth in that. Like I want to perpetuate the scene that gave me a place when I was a kid, probably right around your age. And, I felt like I didn't kind of fit in here and I didn't fit in there. And, to be able to find something like this. And now I sit here and I'm looking at myself in the screen with, a big gray beard as an older man. And I didn't anticipate to still be here in it at this point in my life. But here we are. And you got guys like Kirk from Crowbar, and like plenty of older guys still killing it.
We cover
Even you know
cover a
at that
crowbar.
age. Pardon?
We cover like a crowbar song at every show.
Oh, nice.
It's the crowd always loves it. It's like it's
Yeah,
such a
and they're
good.
still relevant. That's the thing, is like, it's not like they're just still doing it and beating the pavement. They're still relevant. Down is gearing up, and they're doing their thing. And like, it's so crazy that I guess we used to we made the joke during the studio that, like, when we were younger, there was always like the one old guy in the corner who was in the local scene that everybody kind of knew him because he was the older guy that still hung on. And now when we play, the whole crowd is older. Like, there's more older people at the show, but not only that, they're also bringing their kids into it. And I brought my kid into it. And I mean, I'm in the band, but I'm just saying, even people who are fans of the music are introducing their kids to it, and their kids can chase it out on the internet. The availability of it is quite different than when I was young. When I was young, you still flyered at shows, and you still, like, there were still fanzines, which was like this is my old man, speech, but there was like a tangible thing to buy a CD, or back then cassette, and open up the gatefold of a record, and be able to read, the thank you lists, and the lyrics and all the stuff. And I think that's a key point in like a lot of people that grew up in my time, that they appreciate about that part of the music, because that's just as interesting to us as the music. And it kind of gave you like that little connection, as like almost like an inside track to the artist, and who they're thanking, and why, and what part those other people had in helping get that record out, especially seminal records that probably I like, and probably you've heard and you like, and it crosses generations of people. So, and there's, obviously, like I said, you can get, we mentioned Crowbar, but there's tons of bands that have, lasted for, multiple decades, and still put out great music, and still, appeal to me, and then people that might be 30 years younger than me. So it's really an accepting thing to find, as a kind of a weird puzzle piece where you fit in, and this music has always done it. Scott from Terror is a big proponent of that too. uh, I know that he loves the music. He loves, keeping his finger on the pulse of younger bands and promoting younger bands. And same thing here. Like I said, if I can share something with anyone that helps them have a better experience, or get a little farther with it, I'm more than happy to, because I know what it did for me in my life, and then I see it in my son, and then who knows how much farther down that might go, and then to see a kid your age into it and doing something like this is fantastic. You know, it's very inspiring.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, you were talking about cassettes. So we have cassettes. If you come to the show, we can give you one. They're pretty cool.
Nice.
I don't know. Have I shown them off on the podcast before? I don't know.
Oh, pretty
But
new.
yeah, they're pretty new. It was this dude in Maine like did them for us, and then like we just bought like 25 out of the 50 made for cost.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's the thing, is there's plenty of opportunity out there, for bands to get their stuff out, and physical. I'm a physical person when it comes to that. Even though I drive a car that doesn't even have a player of sorts, it's all digital now. Everything's either a thumb drive or whatever you call them, and or just stored onto your phone or whatever. Play your streaming services through it. But even if you just do the streaming thing, that is not great. I don't really want to go down the road of how that pays and that kind of part of it, but the availability of it, I guess, is what I would like to talk about really quickly. Is it puts it in the hands of people who might not be able to get it. Coming from originally from a death metal band when I was a lot younger, and like I said, fanzines and all that kind of stuff. We would tape trade and we would do all these kind of things, and we would ship, our stuff to other countries. And it was so crazy the reach that just like a fanzine might have, or an ad in one. And now that you have the internet and Instagram and the streaming services that, like, you can post your music up and you can direct people towards it and they can hear you, and then when they come, when you come into their area, they can come see you, or they can make the trek or whatever, but my point being is the availability of having an avenue directly to the listener is amazing now. Like I said, whether it people would argue the payments scales and all that kind of stuff, that's something to be argued. But I think just the progress that they've made in technology has made it so much easier to get to people all over the world in a second. You know what I mean?
I mean, booking shows is so much easier now with social media, so that's a plus. Something like, since I know streaming doesn't like pay you much, that's why I really like Bandcamp, because if you like want to support an artist, you can just buy their song for like $1, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and the artist
You
gets almost all of that money. I think Bandcamp takes like a little fee, but a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, you know, if you really think about it, like, obviously we put out physical copies still, vinyl's big still, which is amazing to me because I'm not a vinyl guy. And our band puts out tons of vinyl and people collect a lot of vinyl, but the point of it being is there are still people that want physical copies. Not every Some people don't have room in their life for that, and they do the streaming thing. And you know what? If they show up at the show and they buy one of your shirts, it's just as cool as if they bought the record. The finances just change, and that's why you start to see some of these bigger bands with bigger productions having more. You see it like in the internet news. Somebody canceled the tour because it wasn't beneficial enough for them to be able to do it. And stuff like that happens because the pay scales are kind of weighed funny. But we're kind of in the middle of that. We're kind of like small enough that we don't have big production, and so if we can just get there, we can play the show and we can have a good time. We sell some shirts and some merchandise, whatever we got, and that gets us through. You know, Obviously, like I said earlier, we're not career musicians. It seems like a long time to be where we are, but we've always fallen back on. I work in the HVAC industry, um,
That's too.
and some of the guys, we have tattooers and we have guys in different industries, or in business owners and what have you. So they make their real finances at home, and the band kind of you know does what it does. We don't have to worry about it being whether or not it's going to put food on the table for everybody at home. So that's a plus, to being the size we are. If we got bigger and we had to be on the road all the time, and then that became the primary source of income, we may run into those issues that people talk about. And I think it's a real thing. I think there's a legitimacy to that. Um, because there used to be a time when records, went platinum. To have a platinum record now is amazing, especially in our kind of music. Like even close to something like that. In the pop world, that's one thing, but because that's being fed to the masses. But for us, you kind of got to either be involved in this or, somebody shows it to you. You don't just happen over into like the kind of music we play,
Yeah.
and the kind of music you play.
Is platinum a million copies?
Yes, platinum is a million copies, and you know, um, that's that's quite a feat for a lot of people. So it's a big deal on any level, but it's a bigger deal now because not as many people buy physical copies.
Yeah.
So,
My other band, World of Chaos, we've been going for like 2 years now. We have 12-inch records. For farm machinery, we don't have enough money yet, but we would like to do like a 7-inch at some point.
mhm.
So
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys out there, if you're kind of a hustler, and I don't mean that in a shady way. I mean hustling like you're willing to get out there, which, obviously from what I've seen so far, like you're pushing your band, you're getting out there, you're on the pavement, trying to make things happen. There are plenty of smaller and mid-level size labels um that have an interest in hearing what you have and potentially putting it out. Now, the negotiation of those deals always becomes, basically a personal thing. What do you want to get out of it? Like for me, a lot of times, things are just the availability to get your name out there more. It's not about the immediate payoff. Once you get to a level and you start, bringing more people to the show, the rest of it kind of falls into place. Our shows, when we were doing, if we had 100 kids or 200 kids, it was amazing because it was, usually in small places and packed, and people are, basically killing each other. Which I condone is I don't want to see anybody really get hurt, but I like to see the people react. Um, but like I said, as more people come to that, and you become more of a commodity to bringing people into the rooms, there's going to be the money comes along with it because they know that it's going to cover it, and those negotiations start to change, and and you get to a point, and you get to a thing where you know what you're worth, and you start making decision based on if you go to a promoter, and you have an opportunity, or you're coming through that area and you want to book a show, and they give you a figure that you're not happy with. I mean, you can choose to take what they have, or you can negotiate and say, listen, we know we're going to put X amount of people in the place, just on our side. Um, and you can negotiate more, hopefully, but like I said, all that kind of really starts to fall into place. You start to know by feedback, by how many people are hitting your socials. It's kind of a weird thing for me to have to verbally say that, but because I still kind of look at that, like, there are people who look at, how many friends do you have? How much are you, how much traffic are you getting? And it's a real thing because it's an investment. When somebody puts up money to say, record your next record, pay for the recording and have it pressed, they're making an investment in you, and they have to make that money back. It's business is business, and that's the crappy part of it, because as a musician, I know that, there's just a level of, um, there's a part of you that just doesn't really care about that part of it, right? Like you just want people to hear your stuff. You want to get up and play in front of people. You want to have the good time part of it, and the good time part of it comes. And you're seeing some of it. I mean, you're playing shows, and you seem to be getting out there into some places. So for you to come from where you're coming from, and playing up near me, it's not across the world, but it's pretty far from where you are. So like I said, those things start to factor in, and as people see you making those treks and the investment that it takes to get to that level, then they're like, okay, this dude's willing to work. his band's willing to work for this, and they'll that's when people start to gravitate towards you, and I think then is when, like I said, these other things really start to happen because people are like, oh, well, I heard from so and so about your band, and I heard from this guy about your band, and I heard it, on streaming services or Bandcamp or wherever, I got a hold of the tape, whatever it is, they hear it, and they're into it, and they know you're a hard worker, and they'll invest in you. We've had plenty of opportunities over the years. I'm sure if you look back on any of our stuff, we've repressed stuff with different labels, and over the years, and we've done well with that stuff, and but more of it is a lot of the people we've worked with have been close to us, have been friends, people we've made friends with over the years who like believe in the band. And I would say, getting back to the new record, one of the things about this record is not only was it five guys together who have known each other, in some cases more than 30, 40 years. I'm 53, and I started playing guitar right about 13 into 14. And 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 that's only because my parents weren't musicians or anything like that. I actually come from a country music family, which, if you can believe, I had the
Funny.
one rock and roll uncle who showed me AC/DC and Iron Maiden, and then it went to the Metallica, Megadeth, that kind of thing, and then straight to death metal, and then through all of that, and then came back to the hardcore thing with a little bit more tangible vocals and lyrics. And but at heart, I'm a drum picking death metal, like metal guy. That's
Yeah.
that part of is what I bring to the band. The other guys, some of them are more old school hardcore guys, and punk rock guys, and like it's a good blend of all of those things.
Yeah. So we're like a mix of like brutal death metal and slam, or I guess like a mix of slam and like old school death metal. Um, so I like to say that we do the slam instrumental parts, but not really the slam vocals.
Yeah,
Because I'm not a huge fan of slam vocals, but I love like slam instrumentals and stuff like that. Just a stupid caveman riff.
yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I have a lot of friends in that genre. You know, the guys from Sanguine Sugar Bog, but Devin, yeah, Devin's
Devin
great,
on
and
We got Devin do guest vocals on the track.
yeah, and great dude,
Mhm.
totally into it. When I first met him, he came up to me and he said he appreciated my band, and at the time I thought he was talking about 100 Demons, and he was actually talking about one of my old death metal bands that he knew from. I'm not even sure how he got exposed to it because
Oh,
he's
what do you,
significantly younger than me.
what's your old band called?
So I was originally in this area. I was doing a band called Tyrant Trooper, and we did a lot of shows in New York, Mass, Connecticut, Rhode Island, local 4 or 5 states. We didn't do a lot of traveling back then. It was a lot different than it is now. I think if we had been a band now with the opportunities that are for exposure, we probably would have done more. But considering like what we did back then, we were like the band that we were a death metal band, but we had like a lot of breakdown stuff. We got lumped in with a lot of the hardcore, crossover kind of band shows and stuff like that. We opened up for like Machine Head on their first tour.
That's cool.
um yeah, we did like a kind of like a lot of weird stuff, but played with like Brutal Truth and Grave and uh, Cancer and James Murphy's band Disincarnate. Bands like that. We did. We played with Meshuggah well before they got as big as they are now. We had some local promoters that were big fans of the band, and they helped push. And that's where I was kind of going with the thing about this record. Not only five guys in the band were fans and of this stuff and friends, but Greg's a friend. Justin is a friend and somebody who wanted to. I mean, there's a financial part for him too, obviously, because he's from the label, but you know he wanted to see us get back on it, like back on the horse, kind of thing. And same thing with Greg. All the people involved were as much fans and friends as they were components to making that record. And we're very fortunate to have those people. That's why I kind of always fall back to that friend thing. And some of them, like I said, when you get to that level where you get to do the things you do, but you get to work with, really cool people, but you also get, to get to places where, like, say they're friends, but they don't live near you, but if you start doing a run of shows, every show you go to, you're gonna see people that or you met before, and it's gonna be cool to hang out with them, and then you do your set, and then it's you're spending a lot more time hanging out than you are actually playing, in a day's worth of, unless you're traveling back home very quickly or something like that, or to the next show. You get to have a good time with some people you don't get to see all the time.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. What's a band 100 Demons has played with that you're really proud to admit you've played with?
Oh wow. That's a crazy long list. Because when you play festivals and stuff like that, I mean you play on the bill with big bands.
How about five?
What's that?
About five bands you're really proud to say you've played with.
Wow. All right. Five bands that I'm proud to have played with. I would say one of them being Terror. I really love those guys and as a band. I think they're great for the music. I think they're great for the scene. We've played with bands like Cryptopsy, in prime times, long time ago. But we played with I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Blood Has Been Shed. It's not always about the bigger band per se. Obviously we've played with Hatebreed. They're good friends and they're a great band, and they're probably, like I said, arguably, you start talking about bands that are on the top of the heap, and doing stuff for the scene. They're always bringing people to the table. Um, you know, Trying to think of who else. I mean, we've played, shows with like that Megadeth was on and stuff like that. But I mean, we didn't play, we didn't tour with them. Another really great band that's close to, or two, you know what? I'll give you two bands that are closer to us, both as great acts and as really good friends. Sworn Enemy, um,
I
if
don't
you're
know that.
familiar with them. Yeah, really good guys, and love playing with them. Done tours with them, and Mike and the guys from All Out War. All Out War, we've done so many shows with over the years. Another, just a great band. They're close to us. They're in New York. So the availability is there, but so it's funny because we joke about seeing each other in states away from where we live, when we technically live one state away from each other, not every day, and every time we see them we're somewhere far, but these are like bands that over the years, there's bigger bands, but the thing is, for me, is like these are guys that are just like rock solid dudes. They're into the scene, you know, um, guys like, like Pete is. I'm not sure if you're aware. Our singer is also playing with Blood for Blood now. So if you're ever a fan of Blood for Blood and Rob and those guys, they revamped the band a little bit. The guys from Death Threat, great band, great friends. Just for so many years, we've done so many shows together, and that that satisfaction's a little bit more than like the biggest band kind of thing, because I know if I wanted to do a really cool show, I could call all those guys and say, "Hey, you know, these guys are in. Are you in?" And they would, if they could at all make it work, they would do it, and it would be a great show. And there's always great turnouts, and they're not all, they're not all the biggest band in the genre. We have had the opportunity to do some stuff. We're trying to work out some bigger tours. You know, Coming up now, and kind of branching out. I have friends. If you've seen me post anything, some of my dear friends are the guys from Fit for an Autopsy. And that's afforded me a lot of things. Will He mastered our CD. He also plays in End with Greg. Um, but he's, I mean, the guy's basically a Grammy winner. So with the body count stuff, and some of these guys have made like these huge advancements, but yet they're still just friends. They didn't get big or big heads and kind of like walk away from what they know they always loved. They're trying to get bigger at it. I mean, those guys, I mean, they've been touring extensively with a lot of the bigger names, the In Flames, kind of guys, and Lamb of God. And last time they were around, they came through by us at the casino, meeting those guys, and hanging out with all those guys, Pat and Tim Blue, all those guys, Hosian. Um, all those guys are fantastic in their own right. They're all like master players. I mean, it's crazy to think, that like we even cross. But Pat is originally from Jersey, and was a big hardcore guy, and I was the other, kind of the other way around. I was a big metal guy who was into hardcore, and some of the guys were the other way around, and they were, hardcore guys into metal, and somehow we just, kept going, and the bands became the bands. I mean, really, other than vocal style, we're just trying to do heavy stuff. Might be a little bit different with like blast beats and trem picking and stuff like that, but it's about being heavy and writing stuff that people want to hear and people make people want to move, because I don't think I'm writing a top 40 hit. I'd love
Yeah,
to say that I could have the one that pays the bills forever. I'll be a one hit wonder if that's a thing, but I think the reality of that happening in the genre I'm in, is probably not going to happen, but I'm okay with it, because that's not why I'm where I am. I'm where I am because it's always been the place that I felt like I belong. I can go to any show, and people always come up to me. They appreciate the band. They tell me their stories. I love to hear them. I love, some people, are a little standoffish or whatever, but like I've always been, the guy, to sit at the bar, and well, not at the bar, but in the bar, whatever, because I don't really drink or anything, but I have in the past. But I'd be the first guy to be out in the crowd trying to network and just be out there and be available to people, you know. But when somebody comes up to you and says, man, I went through some hard times, and and I'm sure you've heard this before, that somebody has probably said, I went through some hard times, and your music helped get me through it. That's like something I can't even really totally wrap my head around, you know. But I obviously I appreciate that. Um, because I don't put myself, I've never reached the status of the people I look up to. So I'm always striving to get to that next level. I'm never the guy who's leading the pack. I'm always feel like I'm chasing the guys I'm into, like and their success and their um until I'm the player that I want to be. Like, I think I'm decent, but like, I don't think I've mastered the instrument by any stretch. There's always the next guy. There's always the 6-year-old kid from, Japan who just blows me away,
Yeah.
on the internet. So Instagram is really humbling when it comes to being a musician. Some 6-year-old kid with an acoustic just can smoke me, in a second.
Insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just crazy. And but again, this goes back to the technology. Like, the fact that I can just sit there and randomly see that kind of stuff is amazing, because when I was a kid, that didn't exist. You had to listen to the tape by ear and try to learn your favorite songs. They started coming out with tab books and all that kind of stuff. And now there's like Songster or whatever.
Yeah, it's
You know
crazy.
not,
I can learn a song just by going on my phone and searching up the song. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm happy about it. Actually, I'm not even knocking it, because I think that tool will will hopefully get younger kids into it, like earlier. And, so by the time they're, 18, 20, like yourself, as you get into like 20 years old, you've got a handful of years under your belt. You're not just getting started, you're ready for it, and, because my stuff didn't really hit until I was in my, early 20s, when we really started aggressively playing out and doing touring and stuff like that. But, you know, you want to be able to be prepared for that, because it's not just about playing, it's not just about having the gear. It's not about all that stuff. I mean, there's so much you need to know about life and negotiations. And if you don't have somebody in your corner kind of helping you with that stuff, especially in the early days, signing documents that you don't know how they could impact you in the future. You just want that, you want to have that first record out, right? So somebody says, "Hey, I'll put that record out," but then you don't realize, like, you could potentially be signing your whole your whole ownership of that music away, for forever. We've been fortunate that that hasn't happened to us. But our whole catalog is going to be made more available all through closed casket now. Justin has secured all of that. So somewhere down the line, you may see the releases from that, and but it's all under one house now. So I'm hoping that for the rest of the time that I am in this music and in music in general, as for as long as and as far as I can take it, that we're where we need to be. We're with people who care. We're with people who want to see us succeed as much as we want to see us succeed. And like I said, that doesn't mean millionaires or anything like that. You're not going to see me in some wild, uh, you know, I know I'm dating myself on this, but you're not going to see some MTV Cribs, 100 Demons edition. But just to be able to, keep yourself going in it and keep yourself motivated in it, because it's easy to fall down. I'll be honest with you. There are plenty of bands that were fantastic and just disappeared. Um, you know, I've got some friends, and they've been through some reunion stuff and what have you, but Dying Breed out of Troy, New York, and I mean, I'm still friends with those guys. I still talk to some of them, and I just, when we used to play together, I thought they were a fantastic band. They were like a metallic hardcore band. And, for whatever reasons, life happens, and they just disappear, or they break up, or, one guy goes on, and, whatever it is. But there's 100 of those stories, of different bands that are great, that you don't even know why they're not there anymore, because they were, at one point, they could have been the next, you know, well, in this case, say they could have been the next Hatebreed, or they could have been the next whoever, you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you could tell your 14-year-old self anything at all, what would you tell him?
Oh boy, practice, practice, practice. There was a time when practice. We were always a big every band I've been in has been a big rehearsal band, because we want to be able to go out and play effortlessly. You don't want to be struggling, you know. I guess I might say something to the effect of, um, keep the mindset that the dollar is not the most important thing. The art is. I think I've been afforded more in my life through the art factor of music than I have monetarily. I think there's something to that. I think do it because you love it, you know, and hopefully you never start to hate it because it became a job, because that happens too. There's plenty of guys that just have to get up there. And I'm not talking just in our genre. I'm talking about in music in general. There's plenty of guys get up there because they're not going to go start digging ditches now. This is what they do, so they have to keep doing it until they can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So find the fun in it. That's the best part of it. Like I said, money's money and that helps. But the relationships and the fun that you have doing it pays off way more.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you have anything else to add before we wrap it up?
No, I'd just like to say thank you for having me on, and I really appreciate you thinking of me, and to be honest, I'm really impressed. I'm proud of you for what you're doing. I
Thank you.
think that's something that you should be proud of. You're getting out there and you're using this technology to the best of your ability. And I'd like to plug a few quick things. Obviously we have the new record. Embrace the dark, embrace the black light, and all of our other stuff is out there. We're going to be touring a bunch more. We've got a bunch of stuff starting in October, and next year is going to be crazy. And if you get a chance and we're in your area, come see us. And afterwards, share that info on your local show. I know where it is, and I believe you said October 8th.
Yeah.
Up near me. 9th? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll meet up there and meet in person. But like I said, thanks again for having me on, and thanks for perpetuating this thing we're in. You know.
All right, cool. Well, thanks to Rick for joining me today, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Spotify and other streaming platforms. Until next week, bye.
Take care.